Hey everybody, it is Chris. I hope life is treating you well. Today's video is going to be rebuilding the water pump for the 310 and the 1855. I got my water pump kit from Ag Parts First. There's your part number. It says it fits a 1650, 1655, 1750, 1755, 1800. The 1850, that would be gas only. The Perkins water pump is different, takes a different kit. And of course the 1855. So one of the first things I want to do is get a depth measurement. And you don't have to have a high-end set of calipers or even a caliper, I guess just something that you can get, because this pulley is press fit onto the shaft, so it can be put in the wrong spot essentially. There's no step or anything to stop it. So in order to have your fan belts lined up properly, you need to get it back where it was. So the easiest thing to do is just find the depth on this, and I can lock it in with the screw and set this aside. Then when I'm pressing the pulley back on, I know I get it back to where it was. This one seems to turn smooth and everything, but overhauling the engine, restoring the tractor, I am not gonna take the chance on it going out right after I do all this work. So the next thing we need to do is get the back cover off. Of course, the bolts go through on these empty holes that hold it to the block. Then you got screws the rest of the way around, and they got to be those kind of screws because they got to be flush for everything to fit and seal. One of these impact drivers is almost essential to really getting those screws out. If you don't have one, when you hit it with a hammer, it causes a twisting action and you can set, clockwise, counterclockwise. But it's also forcing it in so it stays in place. And let's see if I can do this. And I also use it to tighten them, so if the gasket's got good pressure against it. It's really a handy tool for other screws and stuff. Good investment. Fortunately, these are coming apart easily. I always like to clean those holes up. Fairly clean in there. The rust line where some of the coolant hung up, or water. All right, now we need to go to the press. Okay, I got the water pump in the press, and it's important to do all these things in the right place. I'm supporting the upper flange. It's either that or the flange where the belts are riding. That's kind of thin in spots. Just asking for trouble. You want to keep it as close to the center as you can. And from there, we just put a bolt in and push. You also want to have a hand underneath to catch it, because when it comes out, it comes out. There's that part. Now we'll see there's a snap ring right there that I need to get out. And away she goes. When we press this bearing and shaft assembly out, we don't want to push against any of this down here. We want to keep it up in line with everything and in center. So you want to get a piece of pipe or something that you can support it that way. This is an old, it's a stiff one. Doesn't feel too good, but it's a PTO shaft bearing that I'd recently changed out. I know the bearing will fit through it because there's the new one. So we'll use that. Just need something to support it. There we go. I'll get a bolt or something. That'll push through this impeller. The housing will support that and push that off as we go down. Excuse me. We'll see how well a bearing holds up. Not OSHA approved. Don't try this at home. Looks up good. Let's see how bad I fail. I can see the impeller just came off. Okay, have to take the impeller out to drive it through the rest of the way. There's the ceramic seal. It's cracked. It could have cracked from me pressing this off, but the amount of dirt in the line tells me it was probably already cracked, so I'm glad that I'm doing this. Plus I can clean this crud out of here. See if that bolt gives us enough length to get it out of there. Not quite. Figures. It just needed that little bit more. Go figure. There's our old bearing. Say it doesn't feel too bad. Well, gee, now there's two cracks in the porcelain. The one half looks pretty darn fresh. The other side is dirty. That porcelain was already cracked. I just finished it off. So, good thing I'm doing it. I'll explain how the seal works in just a moment. That seal is just a drive-in thing, so we'll just undrive it, hopefully. Like that. We'll skip over the fun part of cleaning this up. I might put it in the electrolysis tank for a few minutes. I might loosen some of this stuff up. Okay, here's where we're at. This is the new seal, this is the old seal, and the design is different. And there's a little instruction sheet that comes with it. Tells you how to make a tool to install it. In the past, I've always used this 1¼ inch socket. Sits right on the press all the time. Worked perfect for driving that seal in. But that seal, here's a new, well, the ceramic part is tight. The seal shaft easily slides through that, so you install this seal and then push the shaft through and then put the ceramic on afterwards, and that all works fine and dandy. The rubber part of the ceramic seals against the impeller, and the other face goes against right here. It's spring loaded, that holds it together, and that's what seals the water from getting through there. Now they have it all together, so you have to support this part because the shaft fits tight on that. And if you just push on the outer part, it's going to rip the seal apart. That's why they have that tool. And it's got to have a counter bore to support that. And so rather than making one, long story short, I couldn't use my old 1¼ inch socket because it's only 1/2 inch drive, not big enough to go over the shaft. So I thought, well, we'll use 3/4 inch drive. Definitely big enough to go through the shaft to go through it. Then it was just a matter of getting the depth right. So between some washers and a nut, I've got the depth. They say 0.440. Got my caliper set there, and that's pretty much what she comes to. The idea is when it's in there, notice how it ain't quite seated down. That gives a little spring pressure, or it gives a little pressure against the outer part of the seal. When a shaft is going down through there like this, it's not trying to rip that seal apart because the bottom end is supported. That's the same thing this tool does. I just don't have to make a tool this way, and hopefully it even works. So I need to finish getting everything cleaned up, and then we can start putting her back together. There's a water pump housing after being in the electrolysis tank for, I don't know, it was probably about 2 hours. Went and got lunch, done a couple other things. Give it some time to cook. While that rust is broke free, I think I'll just give it a quick wash in the mineral spirits and see how it looks. A couple little things about water pumps. Maybe some of you, I'm sure some of you know, some of you might not know. This is called a weep hole right here. And when the pump's apart, you can see, hopefully, the seal goes in here. Put the old, kind of set the old seal in there like that. And then we can just see down through there the weep hole. And then the bearings in front of that. And the weep hole allows, if the seal is leaking slightly, it lets that coolant come out here without going into the bearing and ruining that, so you can at least drive far enough to get your whatever to the shop, keep going, get the last field plowed, whatever. Sometimes it's even just a little fleck of something in there and they'll leak for a little bit and then stop. I've had that happen once or twice. And then this top fitting is just a breather. Goes up to the thermostat housing and it just opens up into here, but an air bubble when you're filling it up can get trapped up in here and has no place to go, and then the pump won't work because it can't pump air. It only can pump liquid, and so then the liquid doesn't circulate and your engine overheats even though it's got coolant in it. So you want to make sure that line is clear, the one that goes up to the thermostat housing. And Another little hole right down here for similar reasons, to let the fluid get through and fill everything up like it should. Coolant comes in through this hole, comes up, and then the impeller is on here. And by spinning, it's throwing the coolant out, pushes it down around to here, and that pushes it into the block. This other is a bypass hose, and coolant goes through the block, up through the head, and if the thermostat ain't open, it has to go somewhere. So it goes back through that hose, back into here, and that goes into the same spot as the one from the radiator. But as the thermostat opens, it shuts off the flow to this bypass port, and then the coolant has to go through the radiator. And this is a reason why you don't want to run without a thermostat, because when it's really hot, that coolant can just come back around through this bypass hose and go right through again, and you're recirculating hot coolant. So that's how it works on these. Let's get her back together. I used the 1/2-inch drive, 1.25-inch socket to put the seal in, and thought I'd push the record button, but did not. So that is driven in. Now I'll use this 3/4-inch drive one, which has enough room for the shaft to get through, and then I've got my spacers in there to support the seal. We'll do that over at the press. Got my seal supporting socket. And hopefully I've got it all centered up. We'll know before long. Maybe I'll look in there. Sure looks good. This bearing is directional. The smaller shaft goes in for the impeller. You put it in backwards, you'll find out soon enough you did it wrong. Bigger shaft faces out for the pulley. There we go. Somebody out there are probably going to be saying, Chris, you shouldn't press that shaft when you're pushing that down in, and you're not entirely wrong. The ideal thing would be to push on the outer race, but it's such a narrow piece without hitting the seal. If it's too thick, you're gonna get it wedged in the housing, and if it's too thin, it's gonna crumple. We've pushed them in that way for years and had good luck. It does put the load on the bearing as the shaft's pushing down and pushing the bearing through. So maybe someone out there has got the perfect size of pipe or tool to push these in with, and they can let me know in the comments. Here's hoping. There is a ledge in there that stops it. Kind of stop for a moment and loosen everything, and it can recenter in case I was a little crooked or something. Okay, now it acts like I'm, oh, there it goes. There. I can feel the extra resistance of hitting the bottom. I can see the snap ring groove. So we are good there. Let's see how we did on the bottom side. Well, looky there. It sure looks good. See how it turns. It turns. That's always good. Guess I could put some water in it and see if it comes out the weep hole. Probably easier to do that now than before I put the pulley on. So I will. Yeah, a little wet there from my wet glove, but would have shown it, but I had to use my hands to cover all the holes. Wasn't a lot of room there. But the good thing is nothing came out the weep hole. So we now need to get that impeller on there. We want to just let the shaft support this, and the water pump can be along for the ride. You're not putting any stress on the body of the water pump because you're trying to push it onto the shaft, not onto the body. Get her started there. It has to end up close to the surface there so it can pump efficiently. It's got to be below that surface so it doesn't hit the back plate. But you don't want it quite touching because that's bad. Oh, like that. Hopefully. There we go. That little bit of deflection was making it touch, but I'm good now. It's clearing. This must be the economy water pump kit because it did not come with a new snap ring. And as we saw, my old one broke off. Fortunately, a little scrounging around, and I had a snap ring. Once again, we need to support the shaft because we're going to be driving the pulley back on. So I just put a short little bolt under there and make sure it's pushing on the shaft and not the impeller or anything else. So I lowered the bed of the press. Notice how the pump can still turn because I'm not putting pressure on the body, just the shaft. Then I just have to make sure I get my depth right. It's easier to pull it back up afterwards, but I guess with the back off I can do either. Let's check that. Looks like I got about a ½ inch to go. More. Just trying to give myself something for a reference point here. That ought to be close. Real close. Need to go just a skosh more. Perfect. Now all we need to do is put the back on and it's done. Usually these kits, this must be an aftermarket kit or something, but in the past they had several gaskets with them because the same kit fit several models. But this one only had the water pump back gasket here that I'm doing now, and the one where it meets the block, or the water pump bolts to the block. So I already took a tap and chased out all those screw holes, cleaned them up, so they're good to go. Once again, this is Permatex Aviation Forma gasket, my weapon of choice for most gaskets. It is a beautiful day, already up to 65. So I'm gonna get this water pump done so I can go do some more outdoorsy things, even though I have the door open. Maybe you can hear the birds and the traffic. It's kind of muddy, but I'm sure I could find something to do. I'm putting just a little dab of anti-seize on these. I've had them pretty tight before. When you got coolant nearby, a little bit seeps through the gaskets, leaks here or there. Somehow or another, it always finds its way into those threads. I like to get all the screws kind of seated since they're tapered. It centers everything up good before I really tighten it down. There we have it. One rebuilt water pump. Hope you enjoyed this, and some of you might even want to tackle it yourselves. Some of you might say, yeah, now I know why I hire that done. Thanks again for watching.